My mother spelled it wrong.
Okay. We'll
She spelled it
reconvene
S-U-S.
to general session at 7:05.
N-A.
Trustee Ferrero, please.
Wait, my pen's not working. Mr. Parisi?
Yes.
Mr. Scheit? Yes. Mrs. Caparros here, Mrs. Bruscato? Here. Mr. Lockney?
Here.
Mr. Volpe?
Here.
Mr. Rivera?
Here. Okay, please join me for the pledge. Okay, good evening, everybody. Ms. Capurro, any communication to the board?
Yes. Let me find it. Elm Middle School teachers take pride in looking out for each other, even if that other is simply a sub in the district. Mary Casey has been subbing for Elm for more years that some have been teaching. Earlier this week with the snow, we found out that she was unable to report to work because of her car being in the alley. So the teachers took action. This year, Elm started a WWRD, what would Richter do, fund to honor a retired teacher who always went above and beyond without anyone knowing. Last night, the teachers at Elm used their WWRD funds to employ the help of a former Elm student and lovely entrepreneur. This young gentleman, Joe Scheit, answered the call of an Elm teacher, spoke with professionalism, kindness, and had a motivation to get to all his customers. Joe assured us he would be able to get to Mary as soon as he could, but was working diligently to help other elderly folks get out, so it may not be until later in the evening. Joe not only made his Elm teachers proud, but he did so with kindness that would hopefully continue to be paid forward. When asked how much this job cost, Joe simply replied, "Spread my name around to those who need landscaping." So that is what we are doing. Additionally, I want to add a challenge, to be like Joe and do a random act of kindness for someone. You never really know how much they appreciate it. Thank you, Joe Scheit. Continue to be kind and do well in business. Very nice. That is our yes.
I didn't even know he did that.
Aw. Well, now you know.
I know. Take back all the other stuff.
Not ground them. Take that grounding away. It was a nice letter. Thank you, Ms. Capurro.
You're welcome.
Any others?
No,
Okay.
that's it.
Dr. Gochi and Ms. LaSalle, any public comments? I see no head shakes, no public comments. We'll move on to superintendent's announcements. Dr. Gochi.
So this past month, at the end of January, early February, we had our compliance audit through West 40. This happens every 4 years, and with the we also had our health life safety audit as well. And so with the help of the school nurses, the school secretaries, Mrs. LaSalle, Dr. Smith, Dr. Ontiveros, Ms. Boydston, Mr. Jennings, all the buildings and grounds crew, we were able to have our compliance, and you can see there what the auditor put in from West 40 about our work. It just made me very proud of everything that we're doing to make sure that, you know, we're staying up to date with all the new initiatives and things, even across the global pandemic. So I wanted just to recognize the work that everybody did in our district-wide this past month. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you. This evening, our auditor is Baker Tilly, and Joe Lightcamp is back again. You may have recognized Joe from last couple of years. He's a partner with Baker Tilly, and one nice thing with working with, you know, the same company, sometimes they'll see some of the different things we're doing and giving us constant feedback on ways that we can improve what we're doing, to, you know, whether that's coding and things like that. So Joe's come in to give the thing. This year is a little later. Online, as you can imagine, all the documents and getting all that information was all done remotely, so that worked well. Ahmad Dada, our accountant, is here this evening also. Thank you, Ahmad, for all your work in working with Mike Chimera, who works with Joe, it was our direct contact. But again, Joe overlooks everything and then, writes the reports here that you'll see this evening and that he's going to highlight. Again, thanks for coming in, Joe.
Thanks, Jim, and thank you for having me tonight. There are two reports that I'm going to go over tonight that I think you have in front of you. One is the reporting and insights from the 2020 audit, which is the smaller report, and then the audited financial statements for June 30th, 2020, which is the bigger report with the tabs. I'll be going over it at a very high level, but I know you've had them in advance, so if there's any questions you might have, feel free to stop me at any time, or as we transition between reports or at the end. First off, I'd like to say that based on the preliminary score and the draft score of the annual financial report to ISB, the state has a draft score for Elmwood Park of recognition status, which is the highest status for your financial profile score that you can receive. The draft score is at 3.7, which is up from 3.6 in the prior year. And it was 3.8 2 years ago, so it's fluctuating in that area, between 3.6 and 3.8. So that's good. It's something to keep an eye on to see how you're doing as far as the state metrics. So I will jump in with that. I will jump into the financial statements, the bigger report with the tabs, and I will be starting right before the MD&A tab, which is page 1, the independent auditor's report. So this is the report from us. And what it says is we once again issued a clean or unmodified opinion on the district's financial statements. This is the highest level of assurance you can get from your outside auditors, and states that everything's reasonable in all material respects and can be reasonably relied upon by an outside user of the financial statements. The next place I want to direct your attention quickly is the MD&A, which is after the MD&A tab. This is the management's discussion and analysis. This is a good high-level overview of the financial results compared to the prior year, written by management in terms of what happened during the year. So it gives you some good high-level overview of the financials compared to the prior year. Skipping past that to the basic financial statements, starting on page 11. I like to point this out because this is the one time of the year where you'd see this information. This is all of the funds of the district and all the assets and liabilities. So capital assets, buildings, land, equipment, and all of the general obligation debt. And what that does is that boils down to net position, which was $27.2 million at the end of the year. And on the following page, page 12, at the bottom right, you can see a change in net position of a little under $4 million. So when we talk about net position, since this is long-term assets and liabilities, really what you want to see is good long-term trends in those numbers. And the $4 million is definitely a positive trend. Obviously, you want to see how that works over time. And things like purchasing capital assets, construction projects, those increase your net position. Debt borrowing would reduce your net position. So these are long-term things that impact this. So for the year, you were up a little under $4 million. Something that'll look probably a little more familiar, pages 16 and 17. These are the governmental funds by fund. So the general fund, the operations and maintenance fund, transportation, IMRF, debt service, capital projects, and life safety. This does not have all of the long-term assets and liabilities in it. This is a short-term perspective. So short-term payables, receivables are recorded as, the other side of them as revenues and expenditures. So this short-term perspective on net change in fund balance on page 17, 2020, the total column, you can see fund balance decreased by about $14.3 million to $36.6 million. This is it's due to the spend down on capital projects and life safety. So the planned spend down on construction projects, that you went out for debt, you issued bonds in prior years, and you spend that this year. So that brings down your fund balance this year, but as planned. If you look at just page 16, so if we consider these the operating funds, general through IMRF, those funds increased by about $2.3 million. So you have on the left page, you kind of have your operations that went up, and on the right side, you have your debt and capital projects that went down. Following these schedules, there's some good reconciliation. So I talked about one schedule that's got all your assets and liabilities, and you got one schedule that's only got short-term things. There's two kind of schedules if you want to see what the differences were on pages 15 and 18. Those give you those kind of roadmaps between, all right, what's on one schedule and what's on the other. So if you're interested at a point in time in seeing what the differences are in the schedules, they're there for you. Now you have different uses for the different schedules. Some rating agencies and other users of financial statements might look at the long-term perspective of the district to see the assets and long-term liabilities and pension debt and things like that. Whereas you might look to see into the near term on the operating statements, the fund level short-term perspective. Following these schedules, there's a lot of good information on the notes to the financial statements. It's a lot of detail in capital assets on going up and going down, your additions and deletions, long-term debt, your payments of long-term debt. You can see a lot of that information, as well as the district accounting policies. Following that is required supplementary information, which has some long-term trend information on your TRS, net pension liability and IMRF, and then budget to actual schedule. So if you want to go back into the back and say, and look at, okay, what did we budget for at the beginning of the year for the general fund and how did we end up? You can go and you can see that for the different departments of the district. With that, like I said, that's my high-level overview of the financial statements. I'm happy to take questions before moving on to the next report, or we can move on to the next report.
Nothing?
Okay. So the other report is the reporting and insights from the 2020 audit. This is the non-financial highlights, and this is kind of the results of our audit. If the first financial statements was the district's numbers on what happened, this is kind of the results of our audit. There's a lot of information, satisfies a lot of different auditing standards, and it's a rebranded version of what we'd been presented in the past called the Communication to Management and the Board. Same information, just a little easier to kind of look through and find things, but the same information nonetheless. There are a few pages that I want to point out. The first one being on page 2, I don't think it actually has a page number, but flipping past the cover is the executive summary. I point this out because every year I come here and I say that, I work for the board. I work for management to do, I work with management to get the audit done, but we work for the board. If you ever have any questions, concerns, anything you want to talk about, here's my contact information, should you want to call me directly or email me directly. There is the last couple pages of this document has some questions that to kind of get the juices going to see if things you have any questions about. So I'll leave that in the back, but this is for your information, for my contact information. Page 13. Now I caution you a little bit. I noticed in preparing today that there's multiple page 13s. So I'm going to go to the first page 13, which is it's got a header of audit approach and results. So this area, there's a key areas of focus and significant findings. I point this out because it looks probably worse than it is. There are 2 significant risk areas that are here at every audit we do. Doesn't matter if it's the state and local government, a school district, or if it's a large corporation. Any audit has these 2 significant risks that we were required to look at. Management override of controls and improper revenue recognition due to fraud. So we look at journal entries to make sure that no one circumvented controls. We test the sample of journal entries. And on improper revenue recognition, we look at how revenue is recognized. If there's receivables, money collected after year-end, should it go back to the prior year and things like that. So on the conclusions, you can see that our procedures provided sufficient evidence on both of those. So it's new, it's a little, could be concerning, but I just wanted to point out that our procedures did not determine anything wrong in those areas. The final page I wanted to go to is the flip 2 pages, still page 13, internal control matters. So when we come in to plan our audit, we look at internal controls, not to provide an opinion on internal controls, but to look and help determine the nature, timing, and extent of our procedures. Should we have anything that we feel the board should know about? it would be in this letter. There are 2 comments this year. They're the same comments that we've had in the past. The first one being on internal control over financial reporting. This is because we help prepare the financial statements that we went over first. You know, the business office, their expertise is in the day-to-day finance operations of the district, not fully not keeping up on all the new accounting standards that come out on an annual basis and how those relate to note disclosures and things like that. While management reviews our audit and takes responsibility for the financial statements, it's really, we prepare them as a service. So that's in here as a comment. It's a very common comment to have in your report. We see it in a lot of Illinois school districts. The second comment is on the bank reconciliation process, and this is a repeat from the prior year. And, you know, we've had a lot of discussions with the business office. I think there's, you know, we definitely, you know, there's an understanding of what happened during the year, and I think a path forward, but this comment is in here for your review. With that, there's a lot of different kind of sections of this report. If there were any disagreements with management, difficulties performing the audit, things like that, they would be outlined. As you read through it, you'll see there's a lot of, we did not see this, we did not have any of this or this. So it's a very clean report otherwise in those sections of this report. So I guess with that, I would take questions from the board on the reporting and insights letter.
I had a question. On page 39, there were some material corrected misstatements. Did any of those have any significant impact in any way?
So they do, they are material, and what they were is the allocation of property taxes. The first few lines are of moving property taxes from different funds. And then the last one, it relates back to the bank reconciliation comment that we had, where there was debt service payments that weren't recorded during the year in the debt service fund. They were, I think there were the property taxes received, and Jim could talk to this in better detail, but there were property taxes received in an escrow account that weren't put into the fund. So the payment of those bonds was not recorded. So when we came in, we noticed that and recorded that.
So is that just procedural errors that have been corrected going forward then?
Correct.
So there's really no issue. We didn't have any issue with, it was just a procedural error. Which Jim is probably corrected by now?
Correct. Yeah, we've gone over it. We've given adjustments. It's not like missing funds or anything like that.
All right, great, thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. Mr. Lightcap, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
Yep. Dr. Gochi and Mr. Jennings, to your staff, thank you for presenting this, and everything is good. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have an update to the board on what we are able to offer to our families starting April 6th. So during our last update, we shared with you that we were going to open up the opportunity for families that are currently remote to join our current hybrid plan. And so we had about 250 students that will be joining us starting on March 8th. And now what we want to share with you tonight is what we want to offer to our families starting on April 6th. So tonight you're going to hear from these people that are slowly moving up here. You're going to hear from the building principals as they share what it's going to look like at each of the schools. And I want to just share with you as we go forward, these first couple of slides, these are the same slides that I've been sharing our plan since October. So the next slide, please, Mr. Canane. And this is just staying focused on what are our priorities as a district. And as you all know, it's staying focused on the health and safety and then making that consistent plan. We know that and we've learned with the pandemic, if somebody needs to go into quarantine or, we have to be very flexible in our planning and make sure it's a fluid process. We also know there's new guidelines that can come out all the time. And so as we share with you tonight on February 17th, we know that new guidance will come out and we are ready for that guidance and we can implement whatever we need to implement because of that. Next slide, please, Mr. Canane. These are our goals, right? That we want to make sure that we're flexible, we're responsive, and that we're following the guidelines that are being given to us. Last week on Thursday, the CDC came out with new guidelines saying that those that are fully vaccinated wouldn't need to be considered a close contact anymore as long as they weren't showing symptoms. Well, now we're waiting for IDPH to tell us that information. On Friday, the CDC came out with information on what schools should do to reopen. And there's a lot of information in there, and we're waiting for IDPH and ISB to give us that guidance. So it's the CDC gives information on a very large level, and then we wait for that interpretation to be given to us from the governor, from the Illinois Department of Public Health, and things like that. So as new things are coming our way, we are listening to that, and then we would implement that based on our state and what's required of us. Next slide, please, Mr. Kinane. So here we put some, for our planning purposes, what we are looking at. So we still have to offer that remote option. If you offer an in-person option, the governor is saying you still have to offer that remote option. So we have our remote learning 2.0. One of the considerations is that it may look different, and it may look different dependent upon who that teacher may be, dependent upon how many students we have in the class. So that's one of our considerations. We're looking at pre-K through 5th grade families to choose just an in-person option or that remote learning option, in-person for the 5 days. And then for 6th through 12th grade would be a combination, that hybrid, which would be remote and in-person. And the building principals are going to talk through that. For our staffing, we want to provide that consistent staffing for the students, so they have that teacher that they're going to, whether they're a remote or in person. We had an inclement weather day yesterday, so making sure that the students don't miss that academic opportunity. So that's one of our plans as well. And the next one is really adhering to those mitigation strategies and being realistic about it. So the first one, thinking about, dependent upon how many students are interested in coming back, we may not be able to, guarantee that 6 feet of social distancing for our students, and being as transparent as possible with that. But then also making sure that we are able to adhere to that 6 feet of social distancing for our teachers, because we know our teachers need to be in person to provide that instruction, where our students can go into the remote class if that was something that was needed. So we're also trying to be as transparent and realistic as possible when we think about the different things we can offer to our community. Next slide, please, Mr. Kinane. So I'm going to turn it over, and we're going to start with the elementary. If you have any questions, we of course have opportunity at the end, but if something comes up along the way, please, this is an interactive discussion, so please feel free to ask any of the questions that you have.
Did you start this by saying 250 more families are interested in coming back, or 250 more students?
250 more students are coming back starting March 8th, so that's just our continuation of our current hybrid program that we have. We opened it up to those families that were remote, so we have 250 additional students, not families, students.
All right, 250 additional students, and that puts us at what?
So at each of the schools, it's about, I would say, a third. At Elmwood, we're right about 50%.
Wow.
And then at Elm, we're about a third.
260 students that will be coming starting March 8th.
And that's what percentage?
30, 30%. At John Mills, we're,
We have 198
Total?
total coming back in March, on March 8th.
And that's at what percentile?
So
30, 30%. And then at the high school,
We're at 300, we'll be at 340, we're at 285 now, we have 50, about 55 coming back on March 8th. That'll be just about a third of our student population.
So we're at about a third across the board, except 50% of them.
and then, so what we're sharing with all of you tonight, we'll be sharing with families tomorrow night at a live town hall, and then they have an opportunity to opt in to that option starting April 6th. So this is just for March 8th with our current plan.
How did you get the students with into the March 8th? Just,
So each of the building principals messaged the remote families, because remember when we came back, we said, if you chose in November to come back, you could come back, and we didn't allow others to come back. So we wanted to allow them to come back starting for that March 8th, so we can plan for them to return. So we just sent out, the building principals sent out a message to those that are remote to offer for them to come back starting March 8th.
nice.
So we'll have a survey, we'll have the live town hall, we'll have the survey, we'll send that out to all families once they hear what the new schedule is, which is more in-person time, which is what we know what our kids need. So it depends upon, it depends upon the classroom size. So most of our classrooms, like if you're thinking at the elementary, from what we're going to show you, I would say 15 kids could meet the 6 feet social distancing on average. So if we have more than 15 kids in the room, it would be less than the 6 feet. I don't know what it would be exactly, but we just want to be transparent with everyone. If you don't feel comfortable having your child within that 6 feet, less than the 6 feet, then we do have that remote option, our remote learning 2.0 option.
But haven't they reduced the 6-foot social distancing?
They haven't reduced it, they just say maintain the social distancing to the greatest extent possible, whenever feasible. So they haven't come out and said, they haven't given us a number. In this state.
Well, a lot of states have reduced it, that's why I'm asking, because
And they may, but at this time, it's still, and they word it to, the main.
Give you as much as possible.
Yeah, and when feasible. So it's not feasible when you're walking in the hallways to maintain 6 feet of social distance. It's not feasible. And so in our classrooms right now, it is feasible to maintain that 6 feet of social distancing, but we're letting you know that it may not be feasible. But we don't know until we know who the kids are that are coming back. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Matt and to Frank.
Good evening. So we just have a little bit to share with you today, but just to kind of give you an idea of what we're already doing for our hybrid learning. So currently, both at Mills and Elmwood, we offer half day, all day in person, and then half remote. So any of the students that opted into our hybrid program are currently coming from 8:15 to 10:50. So they get 2.5 hours of live instruction with their classroom teacher. And the students that opted for remote, they get 2.5 hours of live instruction virtually in the afternoon. And we already talked a little bit about the numbers of where we're going to be March 8th. So what we're looking at for April 6th is offering more. So currently what we're offering is a half day for all of our students for in-person learning. Moving forward for April 6th, Mr. K and I are looking at potentially offering a full day, 5 days a week for students that would like to come back in person. So if you look at what our schedule here is, so really it's normal school for the most part from the schedule standpoint. But what you can see from the slide is these are the number of minutes per day that are offered at an elementary full day every day. The sample schedules you see is Elmwood and John Mills. They look different just based on the teachers and based on the schedules. But what you will see is the minutes are the same for every grade level for what they're teaching across the board. So the school day would be 8:40 to 3, which is what we would typically be in a normal everyday school. We have a lot of things to consider, obviously, with the new schedule, as far as some of the things that are going to come out through the day. But Mr. Kinane, can you click on one of the two sample schedules for me? So just to give you an idea, again, this is Elmwood. John Mills looks a little bit different, but you can see across the grade levels, this was created, same thing with John Mills, in collaboration with teachers before last year started. So we did not have to create a new schedule. We went back to the original schedule that was created for this school year at both buildings. So again, you can just kind of see, mine's color coordinated, but where the times are per grade level so that they can continue to see their schedule for the day. The teacher helped us prepare the schedule. Obviously, there'll be some things that might need to be tweaked and changed as a result of coming back full day in our current state. But this is the general schedule that we will be following for an elementary schedule. Mr. K, did you want to add anything there?
No, the only thing is, one of the things that we started, and luckily, we start working on building that master schedule like about this time of year. And, last year when Dr. Wade and Dr. Gochi had told us, hey, take your laptops home, we're probably gonna be out for a little bit. Who knew it was gonna be a little bit and a little bit more? And, we started working on the master schedule at that time, thinking when we came back in the fall, who knew it was gonna last this long, but we're probably going to have some parameters in place to keep kids separated anyway. And, I got to give a lot of credit to Ms. Higgins and Ms. Orlick, our two assistant principals, for kind of having that foresight in the way we're spacing out recess. So it wasn't going to be a lot of kids out there at one time because we had already thought that we were going to have to do that anyway come August if we were back in class. So recess at least at Mills, it would only be one grade level out there at a time. Same at Elmwood. So like those kind of things where we kind of already were thinking ahead to how can we separate these kids. Again, with lunches, they overlap by about 10 minutes. So one grade level's in there, the next one comes in, and then they're leaving 10 minutes later. Again, trying to stagger the amount of time groups are in there. But as Dr. Gochi said, everything is going to be dependent on the numbers, right? Like, so once those surveys start trickling in, will dictate to, the actual flow of the day. But at the middle school level, all of our minutes are the same for all of our core areas, still offering, specials, because that question does come up a lot from our parents. Is my students still going to get the art that they really like and the PE that they enjoy? Yes, they're going to be getting that. We're still giving the intervention times through our Trojan time at Mills and the Yet block over at Elmwood. So it would just look like a traditional day, everything that we knew as 401 BC. So, that's what we would be reverting back to at the elementary levels.
So just a couple of things. Sorry, Ashley. Mr. Kennedy, click to the next slide. So just, if we put kind of 4 bullet points here to just consider. So right now, the remote schedule is a little bit different based on the in-person, but what we'd be looking for and envisioning, you saw an in-person schedule. The remote schedule would be very similar. Again, we don't know what that's going to look like because we don't know how many students are going to choose to go full remote, which goes to the next one, that your classroom teacher may change as a result of offering full day. Currently, right now, at both Mills and Elmwood, we were able to keep homeroom teachers and their kids together based on the schedule. If we go with the full day option, that's probably not going to be a case for all of our students, and we wanted to be very transparent with our parents. So if I'm a teacher and I am an in-person teacher and I'm in that homeroom, but I choose full remote, I may have a different teacher teaching me full remote. And again, we will not know that until we know the number of students that are coming back in each of those homerooms. And Mr. K and I will be working with those teachers to figure out what is the best option to teach those remote kids and to teach those in-person kids. We know relationships have been built. We're 3/4 of the way through school, so we're really going to take that in consideration, but we also wanted parents to know that that could happen based on their preference of whether they're remote or in person. We talked a little bit about the lunch schedule. Obviously, lunch will be different during this time. So we are limited by the amount of people we can put in the cafeteria. Obviously, that is also a time that masks will come off because you can't eat with your mask on. So we're going to be following strict protocols of what that looks like in the lunchroom. Or different areas of the building, depending on what we decide to do for lunch. But then the other thing too, students will wear masks all day. I know right now our students are doing a fantastic job of wearing masks. It's only 2.5 hours. Obviously that day gets extended by quite a bit. So we will have built-in time where we will be able to do it. Thankfully, it's April. It's not February 17th and it's snowy and terrible. So in April, we expect we'll be able to be outside, be able to do a lot of those certain things that we imagine doing with COVID. So we're thankful that it'll hopefully be a little bit warmer, that we'll be able to take mask breaks outside, be able to do things with kids more outside and get them out of that classroom. So anything else you want to add, Mr. K?
No, sir.
Thank you. All right, good evening, everybody. So Mr. Wilds and myself have one shared slide, and this is just to show you when we break down our bell schedules for you, you will notice that staff support time is still in the morning for our staff. And this just gives you a breakdown of the daily professional development and meetings that our staff will be committed to in the mornings from 7:45 to 8:05 in the morning. This also does show you the alpha split and the students that will be coming into the building by day. But again, this is just kind of that breakdown of that staff support time for you guys. Mr. Kanane, if you'd like to go to the next slide. So we know on April 6th, along with a change in students coming in, we are going to be revising the bell schedule. You will notice that our bell schedule will look different in that our students will go from 45 minutes of classes. Their classes will be 50 minutes. We have learned at Elm Middle School that our students do not need a 5-minute passing period, especially if they do not have lockers. So we were able to take some time from the passing periods and put it into the classroom to give our students 5 extra instructional minutes in each of their courses. Students will also have that 5A, which it will look different based on 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but that's lunch, our career study time, and our advisory time, and those classes will be 30 minutes long, and we will put the shift on. You will see students will going lunch, advisory CSI, CSI advisory lunch, and so on and so forth. And then you will notice we do start at 8:08 in the morning, and our students dismiss at 3:02 p.m. Mr. Kinane, if you could go to the next slide. As always, we have our select students that no matter what your alpha is, our students are invited to come into the building, and it looks a little bit different than it does now, but that's Monday through Thursday, and those are students that are included in our instructional special education classes, our instructional English language learners classes, and our core students. These students will be invited to come to school Monday through Thursday, no matter what their alpha is. Mr. Kinane, if you could go to the next slide, please. All right. So moving forward, we are looking at doing an alpha split, and so what it would look like is Monday and Tuesday, if your last name is A through L, you will come to school all day, periods 1 through 7. On Wednesday and Thursday, if your last name is M through Z, you will come to school periods 1 through 7. We looked at this and just making sure that we could provide the most amount of consistency for our students, having 4 days, giving our students 2 full days in class, and then we'd have to have that Friday where, you know, an extra group of students get an extra amount of time in the building, and we don't want to do that. We want to provide a consistent schedule for our students and our families where everybody is getting an equal amount of time in the building, and this was the best way to do it. You will notice if you click on that modified schedule, our Friday schedule is our early release schedule, which will also allow for our students to have some asynchronous time with their teachers to check in, double back, ask any questions, follow up on assignments, retake a quiz, retake a test, really get that extra support that our students are craving since we got rid of that asynchronous time, and our teachers. They really loved it. Kids, we've only heard that kids want it back. They need additional time to talk to their teachers, because it's not like we have that time where I could say, hey, Mr. Parisi, can I come talk to you during advisory today? It's just different. So we know that we need to change some things up to give our students more support and to give our staff more time with their students. So you'll notice that the Friday schedule, the bell schedule is a little bit different, and that's just to provide more support for our students.
So will teachers be in the building
Absolutely.
and the students would be able to come in?
So Fridays, everybody would be learning remotely. Everybody would be at home. And everybody. And that is simply because with having 5 days in the week, we would have one alpha that would have one additional day in school, and we want to make sure that everybody is getting the same amount of time in school.
So the teachers wouldn't be in school, they would be remote?
Teachers would be working at school.
Teachers would be working.
Absolutely.
Right, so what if the kids wanted to come in person?
I don't think that we wouldn't be opposed to that option, but to jump on a Google Meet would just be, you know, we wouldn't be facilitating transportation on Fridays, so, you know, families would have to figure out how they're going to get the kids to school for those meetings and things of that nature. Not to mention we'll be doing deep cleaning on Fridays in the classrooms and things like that. So just setting up a Google Meet and having the teacher available would be the best way to do it. But we wouldn't be opposed to it. Okay? All right, Mr. Kinane, next slide, please. So, as I've walked you through all of the steps at the middle school, and Mr. Wiles will go ahead and take over and talk about the high school, obviously we are providing two full-day opportunities for our students to come to school. This is increasing their class time with their teachers. We're adding 5 additional minutes to their classes. Students will continue to see every single one of their teachers every day, whether they are remote or in person, and that has been a commitment of ours you know, this entire way. And then we are doubling the amount of opportunities for our students to be in person in the building. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board, and not to spend a lot of time on many of the similar things that Ashley talked about, but the high school schedule will look a touch different than the middle school schedule. A couple of reasons being we will need to have 4 lunch periods to be able to accommodate the number of students. This would actually look much similar to what our 21-22 school year and bell schedule would look like. We would, again, have a similar schedule that the middle school has. We do need the 5 minutes of passing period just due to the size of the building. So we would have 45 minutes of daily instruction per period, similar to what we have right now. We would not need to have the 1 hour travel and transition time between our hybrid groups. So we'd be able to go to those 25-minute lunch periods. In this schedule, you'd also be allowed to have an advisory period where we could give grade level specific support, social emotional learning, academic support, also working with our social workers, our guidance counselors, et cetera, which is something that we're really excited about providing as well. And then again, we would be able to have our school day start and end in the appropriate time that is similar to the middle school for transportation and things like that. Next slide, please, Mr. Kinane. Similarly, to be as cohesive with the middle school as possible, we would have the same alpha split, A through L on Monday and Tuesdays, M through Z on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then Friday again would be a full remote learning day for all of our students. Our staff would also be in the building. We would have that Friday modified schedule. If, again, Mr. Kinane, you don't need to click on it, it's a slide later, but similarly, our modified schedule on Fridays, we don't need the 4 lunch periods, so we would have just a 30-minute lunch period. More time on, everything would be fully online, and then we'd provide that asynchronous learning time at the end of the day from 1 to 3:15, something that we currently do not offer. And again, if you take a look, it's just a more consistent schedule for us and for our kids and for our families than what we're currently offering. Next slide, please, Mr. Kinane. As Ashley had mentioned earlier, we will also have select students available to have 4 days of full day instruction in the building as opposed to our 3 days right now. And that would include our students in our special ed programs, our instructional model, our core programs, our emotional supports program, our transition program, that is our students who are 18 to 22, our English as a second language program, and then also students that we have identified through our social workers, our guidance counselors, our deans, our staff members, what's called our Tiger support team, who take a look at students who are not being successful currently in our model. We'd also identify them as a select group of students to bring into the building Monday through Thursday, full day. And again, they would be in the building 4 days a week, full time. Next slide, please. As I'd mentioned earlier, this is that Friday schedule. So we have this schedule currently assigned to our early release days. So this schedule is no different than what we currently have for those last Friday of every month currently. This would just be our schedule now for every Friday in April and May. And that would include those being remote days. We would then have that 1 to 3:15 time to be full asynchronous learning. So all of our students who are working from home, and again, as of right now, that's 65% of our students, or a little over, almost 70% of our students are currently fully remote. They don't have any async time with our teachers currently. So unlike the elementary model where we have teachers either teaching fully remote or teaching fully in person, our middle school and high school staff are teaching a portion of the students in person and a significant chunk at home. This async time every Friday is really key for our students who are at home to get that extra support that they normally aren't getting in our current model. Any questions with any of those slides? Mr. Kinane, next one, please. And then finally, just a few highlights of this change. Again, unlike our students currently having 2 1/2 days of instruction in person, we're now upping the ante to 2 full days of instruction in the building. We have twice as much time with our teachers in person with our kids in the building as what we currently have in our model. We have 25-minute advisory periods built in Monday through Thursday, which we're really excited about. This schedule looks a lot like what our 21-22 schedule would look like. So we're now starting to get back into, I think Mr. Frank K had said that it is, District 401 BC. So this is going to be looking like AC after COVID. And then again, we have the async time built into every Friday. We are offering and providing lunch twice a day in the building for all of our students. I think that is a really important element that we are excited about. We can guarantee that students are getting meals twice a day. And then again, this is just a little bit more of a routine that is easier for our families to follow. Thank you.
I have a question. Especially at the high school level, how are you dealing with discipline? I mean, we over the years, we've seen reports of that there's fights and physical contact. Obviously, with a pandemic, that's really critical that doesn't take place. Are you doing detentions, suspensions? What's your plan for that?
Mr. Volpe, you are, hopefully you're not jinxing us. Our discipline report has been zeros for the last 2 months, which has been great, yeah.
You have to have as many people in the building.
Right, right. Our discipline and our behavioral matrix are the same as they were pre-COVID. So if a student does get into a physical altercation, the same consequences would take place. If students are doing things that they're not supposed to do, they're skipping classes, et cetera, all of those consequences would still be in place. But thankfully, knock on wood, with COVID and social distancing, we don't have nearly as many of those things going on in the building right now. So it's a great feeling to see students in the building. We have up to about 100 students in the building at one time right now. But it feels really, really light. And it's when you have you're nearly at a 1-to-1 ratio with teachers and students right now. So we're able to keep our eyes on the kids. Certainly when we get to the point where we're talking about maybe 40% of the kids in the building at one time, you're talking about having 14, 18-year-olds in the building. Eventually, once you can't social distance for every situation, and then we're assuming that kids are eventually going to become kids and things will happen.
Another thing, Mr. Bolton, just to kind of shed some light on that, I know our deans are also doing virtual deaning. So I know they have the dean's dens, and so if a student does need to have a conversation with the dean or any other administrator, we just send them a Google Meet link if they're learning at home. We either have a restorative conversation, issue a punitive consequence, have a parent meeting. I was in a parent meeting about attendance today with Officer Lombardi and myself and an admin from John Mills. So we're still handling all of those things on the daily. It's just, we're not seeing as much of those physical altercations or things like that just because we don't have the students in the building.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Tom, if you go to the next slide. And a lot of this, the safety protocols and things we've discussed, but we're going to keep maintaining a bunch of the IDPH guidelines on the mechanics. Again, checking in. We have the Crisis Go app that seems to be working well. When I come in, I sometimes forget I got to do it in front of the person checking me in at the door. Wearing masks, social distancing again, as much as we can, maintaining that 6 feet whenever possible. Sanitizing, cleaning, contact tracing. So some of that's going to be fluid, as it says. I mean, especially once we come back, maybe full day, as far as the, sanitizing more bathrooms throughout the day. We probably won't be going in between classrooms, as much as we are now. But again, we're going to have that staff. One thing that we're noticed too with the snow that we've gotten, when we do have stuff, I've talked to Mr. Sierra about, maybe getting a night crew in during the day. If some of our day custodians are out doing snow most of the day, we're down someone during the day, so we want to make sure that we maintain that. So I gave them the approval, like, if we have our custodial that needs to be doing snow removal during the day, to have one of the night crew come in to make sure that we're having the 2 staff members, one primarily just for sanitizing. Next slide, Tom. And again, going on that sanitizing, a little bit different for each of the buildings, but again, having somebody dedicated that we've hired already for each building, that's just, their primary responsibility is to do the sanitizing throughout the school during the day, those high contact points of doorknobs, railings, things like that, when we can. And it's that EPA rated for the coronavirus. And we're still doing the bus routes. We have on the bus themselves, the sanitizer sprayers for when they're, for the seats and things like that. We'll open up those windows once it's not, single digits like it is now. But again, that seems to be working. Next slide, Tom. A room setup, and I know you've seen this before, but again, some good questions as far as each room's a little bit different, but in sometimes the furniture arrangements, so you might see those in the bottom left picture there, the tables that we used to have group work at. A single student's going to be more at that now, or if it's a long enough table, one maybe at each end. But again, trying to maintain 6 feet distance. And then the top left picture, you'll see that the desks are crowded. It's hard to see on the screen, but there's different color coding on each of the desks, so that if it's a morning or afternoon session, the one group might be sitting at the desk with the yellow tabs, and then the next group comes in with the red. But that way they could still maintain. So we wouldn't be necessarily students sitting at every one of those desks. They'd be alternating depending on when they're coming in. Because quite honestly, too, we didn't have places to put all the, we couldn't remove all the furniture. We have nowhere to put all of it. So some of it just stays in the room, and we just make sure that they're not, that they're still spreading out. Next slide, Tom. Again, talking about some of the things I just mentioned. The air intake, I know is a question things, and again, we put the MERV 8 filters on as much as we can to try to alleviate get the best filtration that we can throughout the buildings. And again, looking at that fresh air intake, it does fluctuate a little bit depending on how cold single digits we get. We don't want our equipment to break, the coils in the heating system. So, but again, we're looking at our heating costs will be up a little bit, but that, again, it's part of the cost of, having more fresh air in the buildings. Next time, food service. I know the other principals mentioned it. We're going to be, changing that a little bit as far as when we go to full day, but free food is available to every student, whether they are in person or remote. We have the remote pickup now, and we have delivery to about 140 homes too that we deliver food to. Right now it's packs of seven breakfasts, 7 lunches that are being delivered out. But the students, again, what we have the opportunity, it might change a little bit as far as how we service that once we go full day, but every student that's from the state, it has the opportunity to take the food with them. And again, once it's in the building, if they're consuming food in the building, we're going to social distance, spread out, but they'll also be eating it in the building too once that happens. Be very similar though. It's not going to be like they saw in the past where you go in the cafeteria, have the lines, and it'll be grab and go kind of a meal for the students too. Even those that are eating here in the buildings. So there'll be a table, just grab one, and go to your location wherever you may be eating. So it won't be necessarily hot meals that they're going to be getting.
Silly question, Jim, but
Yep.
they're still allowed to bring in their home lunch.
Sure.
No
Yeah.
restrictions.
Right now,
there.
no. I mean, again, when we're full day,
No,
if
I'm
they're
talking
eating,
full day.
if we're allowed eating during the day, yes, they would be.
Okay.
But again, we have to set up the location of when they can eat, again, because they won't be wearing their mask, obviously, so whether, the cafeteria setting it up, how many students, we have to set up other locations. But right now, no one eats in the building because of the mask. Next time. Visitors, we're making sure that everyone maintains the same, protocols as being checked in and doing things. Did have 1 or 2 instances where maybe early morning, working with custodians, 6 o'clock in the morning, so we've changed the protocols there too to make sure that no matter who they are, we're taking the temperature checking, making sure they're going through the screening protocols, so that if we have to contact trace, we know everybody who's in the building. And again, we're trying to maintain our own, even our district office or the admin, we have most of our meetings virtually, even though, we could be in a room in social distance, but we're still trying to maintain and model that, provide as much safety as we can. So a lot of our meetings too are still virtual. Next slide, Tom. The COVID infection protocol is a link, but when you get on there, again, a lot of the same information that has been provided. It talks a little bit about the Crisis Go app, what questions we ask, you make sure your temperature, have you had to travel, do you have any symptoms, have you been around anybody with symptoms? And then there's also good questions and answers all the way through that as far as that document that will help people with the COVID, what the protocols we're going to be following. So what if someone in the classroom, what if my sibling has COVID? What do we do in the household? So a lot of questions and answers going through. And again, we probably can't say enough, but the wearing a mask, social distancing, it really does make a difference, washing your hands. We haven't had any spread, within the district, and, it's everyone, adhering to those social guidelines, I think was what makes the difference. And at the parents, we haven't had, we've set up for these isolation pods and things like that. We haven't had different things, but I think parents also know that they're, if in doubt at all, if the student just doesn't feel very good that morning, or, maybe it's because of something they ate or didn't eat, but they're still keeping them home. So we don't have, the nurses are not seeing the volume of students that we were fearful of, I think, in the beginning. But we're ready for it if it does occur. Next slide, Tom.
So, as I kind of shared earlier, tomorrow tomorrow night, something very similar to what we shared with all of you, we're going to share with the live town hall. We found that the live town halls, they're recorded, so then if families can't attend tomorrow night, they can watch them after. And we will be giving a survey after that, where all the families can choose, do they want to be a part of this new opportunity that we're offering starting on April 6th? And they have until the end of the month to let us know, because then we can figure out all the logistics of a lot of the things that we were talking about. We need to know who the kids are so we can figure out what that's all going to look like. Then the Monday of the week before spring break, we would share detailed information with each of the family members that chose to have their child come back, and what they will be doing for remote, what they will be doing for their new schedule starting on that April 6th date. And so we'll be able to answer any of their questions that they may have for tomorrow. And then as we get closer to that date, providing more opportunities for families to ask questions about our updated schedule that we have. So questions for any of us?
As usual, very detailed, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you all. Thank you, guys. Moving on to the next item for discussion, and that is the O'Hare Noise Compatibility Commission. This is to extend the current agreement an additional 5 years. And just as a reminder of what that is, we basically have monthly meetings where either I attend or Jim attends, and we listen to any of the updates that might be happening as far as noise concerns, and it's all different areas that are impacted by O'Hare. So by sharing this with you tonight and you agreeing, this is agreeing to that additional 5 years to be a part of this, the Noise Commission. Any questions on that at all? Okay. The next thing that I have is the updated calendar. So during our last board meeting, we had the approved EPIC contract, and in the EPIC contract, there's 2 additional Teacher Institute days. So on the calendar that is included, and this is for a first reading tonight, it's taking 2 of our early release days, one in first semester, September 24th, one in second semester, January 28th, and turning those into full Teacher Institute days instead of the early release days. It worked really well this year when we did our remote planning days to take that early release and turning it into the entire professional development day. So that's what we would like to propose for the calendar now that that's in the EPIC contract, that we need those 2 additional days. So any questions on that at all? Okay, so I'll bring it next month for approval, further discussion and approval. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ontiveros and Dr. Smith to talk about Summer Learning Academy opportunities.
Good evening. We are presenting on the Summer Learning Academy, as Dr. Gochi said. So I'll start out by sharing just some general information and information on some of the courses that we plan to offer, and then Dr. Ontiveros will share about the funding, registration process, and then if there are questions, please let us know. So next slide, please. So the location this summer will be Elm Middle School. The days that we're looking at are Monday through Friday, June 15th through July 2nd, with the student hours being from 8 to 2, which would include a half-hour lunch break, and then the staff schedule would be from 7:30 to 2:30, and that allows for staff to get a unpaid 30-minute unpaid lunch, as well as help with the supervision of students at dismissal and arrival, as well as, you know, there could be some plan time within that. Next slide, please. So the courses available, there are academic courses, which I'll talk a little bit more on the next slide. But students will be recommended for those academic courses based on assessment data, academic factors, IEPs, and also teacher input. There will also be interest-based courses, which teachers will develop, and those are open to all students on a first-come, first-served basis. And then those will be flexible class opportunities for students who are in grades K through 2, and we'll be looking at those grade bands, so kindergarten through 2nd grade, 3rd through 5th grade, and 6th through 8th grade. Next slide, please. So the academic courses you can see on the slide there: Kindergarten Countdown Camp, EL Newcomers Camp, Extended School Year, and Scholastic Academy. And we've included the grade levels as well as the length of time and eligibility. Next slide, please. And then the interest-based courses, again, those would be teacher developed based on the district's priority standards. We already sent out the information to teachers to say, if you are interested in working summer school, please let us know. If you're interested in doing an interest-based course, please provide a description, and then we will review all of those. And then, again, all students in the incoming 1st through 8th grade are able to take part in those courses.
Okay, so registration, student recommendation forms for the Scholastic Academy are going to be due to us February 26th. Our Ames Web winter window closes on the 23rd, so it gives us enough time to collect that data and information. Excuse me. Enrollment begins March 1st, and we'll do it like we did it last year, digital registration via Google Forms. Next slide, please. Okay, so funding. Right now, I broke it down by each of the categories that we will be having in summer school. Incoming 1st through 5th graders, we're saying 2 classes of each grade, which would be about 12 teachers. The newcomer group, 1 class, 1 teacher. Kindergarten camp, we're looking at about 2 teachers for that. Interest-based, 5 teachers. So that would be a total of 20 teachers. Cost of the staff would be about $68,250. You'll notice the next 2 columns, we did cost per student, which we broke it down by how many teachers. It's $227.50. From Title I funds, I would pay $34,500 of that. And then the total cost per student, we would charge each student for summer school $100. The only difference is the interest-based. We charge $150 because that's supplies, materials, things like that. So they would be paying a total of $33,750. Next slide, please. We also know about Apex credit recovery, right? So we want to make sure we offer that to the 6th through 12th graders. The priority would be given to the students who require coursework and skill deficiencies. Students may be enrolled in 1 Apex course at a time. And once they finish that, they no longer have to attend. Additional enrollment in other Apex courses is possible, but we'll have to look at those on a case-by-case basis. And then information, including cost and schedule, will be shared out in the upcoming weeks. Apex credit recovery would be open for 6th through 12th graders.
How long is an Apex class if you're saying you could do 1 and then sign up for another?
So that's a good question. So once they finish the 1 class and it's closed out and they're finished, we'll have two or 3 staff members overseeing to make sure they complete the work. Once that's closed out, that license gets back into our pot. So it's like once one's used, it goes right back to the next. So they could take 2, possibly, based on the amount of time. We're doing about 2 weeks, just like we're running the summer programs, but the hours may be different, right? We may have them come in from 8 to 12, do Apex. They may go a few weeks longer, but the hours will be the same for the teachers.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So what are our next steps? February 26th, staff will review the data sheets. We already have them processing right now. As kids finish their Ames Web testing, we're entering the information in so teachers can look at it and make recommendations. March 1st, we'll do the online registration. We're going to leave it open till the 22nd to give parents time to register and pay that fee. And then March 26th, we should have a good idea of how many kids we have enrolled, and then notify the staff of their teaching assignments. Do you have any questions for us? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ontiveros. Don't go very far, because now we just have an update on kindergarten.
Okay, so we go from summer learning when it's wintertime outside to kindergarten. This is so fun, and we have a great surprise at the very end. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about kindergarten and how it's going with full day. Next slide, please, Mr. Kinane. So I'm sure you can remember the journey, and we like to start with the journey because there's always a start and a purpose at the end. So creation of full day kindergarten committee. There was a committee of teachers. I actually just met with them yesterday to do a check-in just to see how far they've come. But they created a committee of kindergarten teachers and teachers of various grades to kind of get input on what full day kindergarten could look like in District 401. Step number 2, they did site visits to many schools that were doing full day kindergarten just to get an idea of what that looked like and help plan their transition. Step 3, full day kindergarten plan. Committee worked on transition details, What would academics look like? What would core courses look like? What does a full day look like in regards to what the half day used to look like? And then current enrollment, approximately Elmwood 87 and John Mills 78. Next slide, please. So what are the programs that we do offer? Well, we do have the full day. Students receive instruction in the core curriculum, daily opportunities, so it's longer times for ELA, longer times for math. They also have an engagement and purposeful play, which is small centered activities that have a purpose. They participate in all their specials, art, music, PE, technology, and enrichment. Students still have the option to attend half day, which means they would get literacy and math in the morning before they're picked up for lunch. Families can contact their building administrator if they're interested in half day kindergarten. And then this year I know also was new was the dual language program. We have about 14 students enrolled in dual language kindergarten this year. Now remember, dual language is something new, so the more that we continue to do it and talk about it and educate the families about it, the more that we can transition more kids to get into the program. Right now we have 14. She's doing an amazing job. They're doing native language, so they're doing 50% of the instruction in Spanish and 50% in English by one teacher. Next slide, please. Sure. 78.
For Elmwood and 78 for John Mills. Can those schools handle those numbers for that?
Mm-hmm.
And then what would it mean for half day?
The kids are just there for the morning and then they go home in the afternoon.
No, how many more?
How many more are half-day students? I don't know that exact amount. I could find out.
Well, I'm just curious because is that going to put us over capacity?
Are the half-day students included in the full-day number?
Yes, they're all included.
So that's including the half.
Correct. Mm-hmm. And our dual language total. Dual language is like 14 of that number at John Mills. Kindergarten registration, what is it going to look like in 2021, 2022? Next slide, please.
Hold on, back on your enrollment that was this year's enrollment, right?
Correct.
87, 78, whatever.
Correct.
How does that compare to last year's when we were still in our ECC building? We have more students now? I know we weren't full-time then. We were
Right.
part-time or half-time. Did our numbers go up or down? Do we know that?
Matt or Frank, do you guys know by chance? Kindergarten numbers last year at the early childhood, are they similar to this year's or did we receive more?
We had a lot. I mean, it's not as many. I can't remember. It was, because it was only half day and then they had those kids that stayed for extended day, which obviously increased the number went on. So
Right.
I don't know. I do know last year I received about 50 kids from the EPC for incoming kindergarten and Mills was about the same.
About the same, yeah.
So I think it's like 48 or 50 that we received. That's 100 kids, plus there's probably a few more. And that's just the kids that were coming into kindergarten and first grade last year
Right.
from the ECC. So it was a good amount, we had a good amount of students that were at the ECC that came to our school when the ECC was open.
And then 20-something or more new students, approximately.
Thank you.
So in these numbers, what's more popular, full day or half day?
Oh, full day.
Okay, I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. Registration timeline. So in February, I sent home a flyer. It's on the website too. It's on the district page. It's on Elmwood. It's on John Mills. The principals have been kind enough to share it, send it home as well, just to get our flyer out there. It's in all 3 languages too, to let parents know it's coming. It's going to be live on March 1st. What I did is I included a Google form on there too, so parents can put their pre-information in there. So as soon as that link goes live, secretaries, all they have to do is copy the parents' email addresses and blast it out. We want to publicize this as much as we can, that, hey, we're here, we're ready, we're serving kids. March 1st, registration opens. We're actually using a new tool called Link, which everything will be digital. We also talked about at parent-teacher conferences on March 17th and 18th at the elementaries. I know in the past we allow parents to come in and register kids quite a few years ago. So I've already talked to the building principals and secretaries to make sure that we are available during those times in case parents are struggling with the online registration process. They could call them on the phone. They need to come in and make an appointment. They can show them how to walk through it on the computer. And in this day and age, We know a lot of people have bills and stuff digital, but what about those that don't? You know, what about those that still get paper bills? So being able to bring that paperwork in so we can make sure we have a good count of kindergarten kids. May 13th, we're still going to host our kindergarten kickoff. More information will come as things start to open up more and we know what capacity of children we can serve. Then we can figure out how many, centers can we have, what times do those work. But we want to do the same things we've always done. Talk to the parents about what to expect in kindergarten, make sure we do some of our kindergarten screeners, and then our EL bilingual screeners. And then summer will continue registration and screening. Next slide, please. So just some resources for parents. Attached there is a kindergarten registration flyer that has been sent out, kindergarten FAQ, and the Welcome to Kindergarten packet, which we did update from the year previous. Next slide, please. So I know you probably all love to hear me talk about all these great things, but I really want you to hear it from the experts, the people that have lived this full day kindergarten and their testimonials. If you can play the slide, please.
The benefit of that full day is it gives students an opportunity to grow as a student and as an individual. I would say one of the benefits that we have of going full day is being with the students for a longer period of time, really getting to know their needs, really getting to know their wants, giving them the support they need.
Coming from a half-day program where subject areas had half as much instructional time to now where we are having almost 2 full hours of reading and language arts, a full hour of math uninterrupted. It is amazing the ability that you have as a teacher with a full day of learning.
And I think that is one of the benefits that we have here in District 401 is the amount of resources that we have for our students. Whatever a student needs, we really try and advocate to get him or her what they need to be successful while they are a student here in 401.
My students are wonderful and great. I love to see them be so eager to want to learn, and they observe everything, they listen to everything, and everything you teach them, they try their best.
I'm looking at my kids and I'm seeing that they are reading. They are learning their letters. They are learning their sounds. They are applying it, and they are constantly looking for more.
This has really helped her, with her structure, with socialization, and I even see a difference with when she comes home and does her homework. She's happy to do it. She doesn't complain about it. She was eager to do it by herself, which was a big win. And I think it's been great.
He is reading and writing, and he's taking pride in his work. He loves math. He loves enrichment and technology. You can't really picture as a parent what your child is going to be like, so it's actually fun to watch.
Yeah, we just didn't know what to expect, but it's actually been really, she really enjoys it. She loves it.
What do you look forward to every day? Well, my favorite thing about school is my teachers.
That's good.
Yeah. They keep kids wanting to, do better and keep learning. They keep them engaged, and it's all been great.
It really does take a village to raise your children. Our administration believes that. They send their own children here. Their families are present and involved, as are our teachers. Some of these teachers have attended these schools. They live in our communities. They believe in what's happening here, which in turn translates.
As a parent, I did do my research. I did weigh between private versus public, and I see it in her and my daughter every day when she comes home with a smile on her face that we made the right choices.
That concludes my presentation. Do you have any questions for me? I also wanted to thank Mr. Pareka, who put a lot of hard work and effort into putting this together. It was amazing.
What's our community outreach been to publicize this in our community?
Um,
Have we got this out to our library and to our village hall?
We have not, but I would be happy to do that. We have emailed all of the parents within the district through the email. We've also put it on our websites. We're also going to put the video on there as well. It's on YouTube Live. But yes, I can look at.
Registration flyer,
Mhm.
we could use as a marketing piece, and I think it should also go to our local churches, because there are people that may not be connected with yet, because this is the entry into the school system.
Sure.
And I really want to make sure that we can really blow our horn out, that we have this full-day school, full-day kindergarten, and we're in these great new buildings. And I think we should have some community outreach.
Absolutely.
Well, we've never had full-day kindergarten before.
Yeah.
They've always gone to, say, Salisbury or St. Tiffany's before that, so.
Sure, absolutely.
Good advertising tool.
Yep, no problem at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ontiveros. Mr. Jennings?
Next, you'll see the revision for the board policy 4.3. We mentioned this at the last cow. Again, when PMA came out and gave a presentation on the financials and investments, one of the things they mentioned that they do not invest in is what they call corporate papers. And it's something that, the board mentioned that we should put maybe some protections in for the board and for myself, quite frankly. So that revision is written in there now. And again, this is from board press, but except for investments and obligations of corporations organized in the United States with assets exceeding 500 million shall require prior board approval. So that's what they refer to as when they say in those corporate papers, but it's a little more risky. It's not something that PMA would currently invest in or that they're recommending us to invest in. They said you may want to keep it in there so that as far as a possibility down the road, the board may want to, and if you want to, that's fine. I just need to make sure that I come to you and get your approval before we do something like that. I don't foresee it happening in the future, but again, you just don't know. But again, it protects the board to make sure that somebody, myself or someone else, doesn't get a sales pitch and say, oh, that sounds great, or the investments or the return is higher. Well, so is the risk. So we want to make sure that we're conservative in what we're investing in with the tax dollars for the students. So that's what that language is. And I worked with Dawn Hinkle on that language back and forth about what we could do. This is what she advised. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. All right, we'll move on to report of actions. The first one is 9.1, the ONCC Intergovernmental Agreement Renewal. I need a motion and a second to approve the ONCC Intergovernmental Agreement Renewal with the O'Hare Noise Capability Commission as presented.
Make a motion.
Ms. Capero?
I'll second.
Mr. Lockney? Any questions? No questions, Ms. Capero?
Burrows, yes. Mr. Lockney?
Yes.
Mrs. Briscato? Yes. Mr. Volpe?
Yes.
Mr. Scheit?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Parisi?
Yes, that motion carried. 9.2, Chromebook lease agreement. I need a motion and a second to approve the Chromebook leasing agreement with the Providence Capital for the procurement of Chromebooks for equipment totaling $691,800.
I'll make the motion.
Ms. Priscato?
I'll second.
Ms. Caprero? Any questions? No questions, Ms. Caprero?
Mrs. Briscato? Yes. Mrs. Caperos, yes. Mr. Volpe?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Scheit?
Yes.
Mr. Parisi?
Yes.
Mr. Lockney?
Yes.
That motion carried. Number 10, consent agenda. Items may be removed from the consent agenda for further discussion prior to taking any action. Would anyone like to remove any item off the consent agenda? Being none, I need a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll motion.
Mr. Scheit and Mr. Rivera. Any questions? No questions, Ms. Capero?
Mr. Scheit?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Lockney?
Yes.
Mrs. Briscato? Yes. Mr. Parisi?
Yes.
Mr. Volpe?
Yes.
Mrs. Caperos, yes.
Good, that motion carried. Dr. Gocher, anything we need to know for Freedom of Information Act?
Nope.
Nope, all right. Board comments? I'd like to make one to shout out to Mr. Jennings and Mr. Sierra. This being our first year with the snow removal, taking full control. I've walked a few of the buildings and they've done a fantastic job. So a commendable job to our staff for cleaning up, especially after this last dumping. I mean, I walked around Elmwood and Mills this morning and it was pretty clean. It was very clean. So congratulations to you, and you know, we're saving some good money in the district. So nice shout out, thank you. Any other comments? None, we're not going back to executive session. So that means we can, in a motion and a second to adjourn open session at 8:41. I'll take that as Mr. Lockney. Mr. Volpe, your second? Okay. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? None. That motion carried. Thank you.